Every time I died, they just printed me out again.
Everyone asks you, what's it feel like to die?
You don't look like you're printed out. You're just a person.
My understanding is that even before you read the book, just the book description, this idea of human printing was something that instantly spoke to you. I'm wondering why.
원래 요약된 서머라이즈된 거 딱 그걸 주잖아요. 그래서 그거 한 10페이지 안팎이었던 것 같은데 소설은 되게 두껍고 읽는데 한 몇 달이 걸렸고 이후에 일단 요약된 걸 보고 딱 바로 매혹됐죠. 그 휴먼 프린팅이라는 것, 그 다음에 콜로니제이션 하러 가는데 이제 그곳에서 벌어지는 크리처와의 관계 이런 것들이 되게 재밌어가지고.
Yeah, because usually you get a treatment of the manuscript, and I got like a 10-page summary of the novel. It took me months to get through the entire novel, but when I first read the treatment, I was just instantly captivated by the concept of human printing, and also that they go on this colony expedition to another planet and encounter creatures there.
그리고 주인공이 불쌍할 것 같다, 또는 불쌍하게 만들고 싶은 그런 마음이 확 들었었어요.
And I just felt that the main character was in such unfortunate circumstances, and I wanted to make life even more unfortunate for him.
Because so much about it, and it's in that idea, it's in that visual metaphor of how much human life is devalued in this world, right? That's something that just kind of built into the concept that I have to imagine appealed.
거기서 감정을 느낀 거죠. 제 입장에선 감정을 직접 느끼는 게 중요한데, 주인공이. 그래서 미키라는 친구가 이제 프린팅되는, 그러니까 나 자신이 출력되면 어떤 느낌일까 뭐 그런 생각도 해봤거든요. 그래서 미키한테 감정이입을 해본 거죠.
What was important for me was the emotions that come out of the fact that humanity is so devalued through his job. And, I try to think about what the character goes through, the emotions that he goes through as he gets reprinted and as he lives that life. So I really tried to stand in Mickey's shoes and think about this story.
It's terrible. Dying. I hate it. No matter how many times I go through it, it's scary.
옛날식 잉크젯 프린터에서 이렇게 종이가 잼돼 갖고 찌그러져서 나오고 막 우리가 짜증나고, 근데 그게 종이가 아니라 사람이다. 그 인간성이 추락된 그 모습 자체가 많은 감정을 불러일으키더라고요.
If you think about the inkjet printers we had back in the day, you would always get paper jams and the paper would come out all crumpled. And I started thinking, well, what if that's a human being and not a piece of paper? And I thought that
Hewlett Packard.
Yeah, just how humanity, how the way people view human worth, how that has hit rock bottom in this world was what I was focusing on.
You told The Guardian, new technology brings excitement, but I tend to feel fear. I think that's something, I didn't feel that way with the inkjet, but I personally that feels very much like now. Are you is something like AI, is the last few years in terms of where technology going, something that is is that feeling more acute now?
테크놀로지를 일단 컨트롤 못한다 생각하면 일단 겁부터 나잖아요. 여기도 지금 많은 테크놀로지가 있는데, 이 마이크로폰이나 뭐 저희 카메라들도 있고 다 우리의 컨트롤 하에 있잖아요. 그러니까 불안감이 없는 거지만은 못한다고 생각하면 컨트롤을 일단 당장 무섭지.
I think it gets terrifying when you feel like you can't control the technology. There's so much technology in this room. We have the mic, the camera, but we feel like they're in our control, and so we don't get anxious about it. But the minute we think that this new piece of technology is out of our hands, that's when things start to feel a bit different.
운전은 잘하지만 본네트를 열면 그때부터 무섭잖아요, 우리가. 비슷한 마음이.
Kind of like, you're good at driving, but the minute you open the bonnet, you're like, oh my God, what is this? And it's a bit intimidating.
하물며 AI는 더 그렇죠. 지금은 이제 AI들 자기들끼리 의논을 한다 그러더라고요. 에이전트 개념으로 해서. 그래서 이미 되게 공포스러운 단계로 가고 있지 않나.
And so it's probably even worse for AI. I've heard that AI programs are now having discussions amongst themselves and having a sense of agency. And that's quite terrifying if you think about it.
And in the beginning part of the movie, there is a voiceover of Mickey when he was talking about advanced technology. Actually, he doesn't know. 그게 설명을 못 하잖아. 그냥 되게 좋은데 이러면서 그러니까 그런 인물이기를 바랬어요. 미키가. 이제 원작 소설은 약간 지식인이고 역사학자인데 저는 좀 더 우리 주변에 있는 또 이렇게 뒷골목에서 온 아이 같은 느낌이 바랬던 거죠.
In the film, Mickey talks about human printing and the technology, but he doesn't even understand what it is and he can't explain it. He just says, oh, let's just say it's advanced, and he moves on. And I wanted Mickey to be like that. In the original novel, he's a historian, he's more of an intellectual. But in the film, I wanted Mickey to feel like he's just a kid from the streets.
The funniest part and the darkest part for me was the flashback to the legislation over the murders and the multiples. It's hysterical because it's like the ethics of human printing. It's like the ship's already left, you know. And I felt like I could see you kind of laughing during like we're going to legislate this. It feels like your sense of humor, in particular, that flashback.
그 알란 마니코바 그거 할 때. 이제 그 플래시백을 말하는 거죠. 멀티플 플래시백. 그런 거죠. 그러니까 첨단 테크놀로지라고 해도 그거를 관리하는 사람들이나 이런 것 때문에 항상 거기에 실수, 오류, 예기치 못한 이런 것들이 얽혀들게 될 수밖에 없는 건데 그것도 되게 무서운 부분이지만. 네.
I think the flashback kind of shows that despite how advanced the technology is, the people who manage it are just people, people who make the same mistakes. There's always room for human error and unpredictable things coming up, and which is, terrifying.
미키처럼 자기 몸이 출력되는 건데도 그 기계의 원리를 모르는 사람도 있고 반대로 그 기계의 원리를 설계한 사람인데 그 사람은 또 사이코패스야. 그러니까 되게 그럴 수 있는 거잖아요. 사실 사이코패스는 인류의 일정한 확률로 어딜 가나 있는 거거든요. 어느 사회나 어느 커뮤니티에 가나. 예.
So you have a guy like Mickey who can't even understand this technology that's being applied to his body, but then you have, guys like Alan Manikova who are designing that advanced technology but are complete psychopaths. And in any society, in any community, there's always a percentage of psychopaths. It's just a statistical thing.
근데 그 얘기한 그 플래시백은 시간적 여유가 별로 없어서 되게 짧게 설명해야 되는데 그 알란 마니코바 배우가 되게 잘해줬어요. 딱 눈빛 보면 사이코패스 같아. 그렇게 자기 손가락 냄새를 맡는 장면이 있어요. 그래서 그걸 보면 딱 쟤 이상하구나. 금방 단칼에 좀 설명이 됐던 거.
With that flashback, we had to be very economic in how we explain everything. And, the actor who played Alan Manikova, he was so great. Instantly, just from his eyes, you can tell he's a psychopath and he sniffs his fingers. You can tell that there's something completely off about this guy.
His name was Ed Davis.
Davis.
Yeah, Ed Davis.
And the Oscar goes to Parasite.
Coming off the success of Parasite, were you dreaming and thinking of your next project on a bigger scale that had opened doors?
프로젝트를 결정할 때 이제 제가 꽂히는 스토리에 의해서 계속 결정되어 왔어요. 근데 이제 그 스토리에 꽂히냐 마냐는 스토리의 사이즈나 이제 프로덕션의 스케일과는 별개의 문제거든요. 그래서 기생충으로 오스카 캠페인을 할 때 그래서 이제 기생충 개봉한 전과 후에 걸쳐서 이미 준비되어 온 프로젝트가 2개가 있었어요. 항상 프로젝트들이 제가 겹쳐 있거든요. 오버랩돼서 스노피어스 찍을 때 옥자를 준비하고 있었고 그런 식으로. 옥자 찍을 때 또 기생충 조금씩 스토리라인을 쓰고 있었고 이런 식이니까. 네.
So the way I take on projects all depends on whether or not I'm drawn to that story. And that has little to do with production scale and the size of the project. And when I was working on Parasite and working on the Oscar campaign, I was already working on 2 projects. My projects always overlap, where with Okja, I was already working on it since Snowpiercer, and the same for Parasite.
그래서 기생충 포스트 프로덕션하고 개봉하고 오스카 캠페인 할 때 이미 두 편의 프로젝트를 이제 그 중에 하나는 지금 현재 일하고 있는 애니메이션 프로젝트고 또 하나는 이제 런던 배경으로 한 그 실화 사건 그 두 가지를 준비하고 있었고 뭐 스크립트도 일부 썼었고 뭐 그런 상황이었었죠. 그래서 기생충이 뭐 칸이나 오스카에서 상을 받고 말고 뭐 이런 것에 따라 뭐가 좌우되거나 한 건 없었어요. 그냥 그 준비하던 걸 그대로 한 거였는데 다만 그 런던 실화 사건 프로젝트는 제가 좀 윤리적인 딜레마 때문에 그걸 접게 됐고 그 상태에서 그게 이제 그게 스스로 그것을 엎은 상태에서 미키 세븐 소설을 받게 된 거죠.
So when I was releasing Parasite and doing the Oscar campaign, I was working on two projects. The first is the animation film that I'm still currently working on. And the second was a live action film based on a true story or a true event that happened in London. I had already written a part of the script for that. So nothing about the Palme d'Or winning Best Picture kind of, determined anything of those projects. I was just working on it as an extension of the preparation process. But with that film based on a story in London, there was a lot of ethical dilemmas involved. So I decided to drop it. And when I was sort of around the time I was making that decision, the manuscript of Mickey 7 came to me.
When you and I discussed Parasite, one of the things that I found most interesting was in talking about the construction of that house and how it was constructed for your camera and how you saw the relationship of those two families in movement and framing. I'm curious if that was the same relationship you had with your production designer on Mickey 17. And I guess I'm specifically probably thinking about the spaceship, but I mean, was it that same type of?
이 기생충 같은 경우는 그 부잣집의 경우도 관객들 머릿속에 어떤 일루전이 환상이 필요했어요. 우리가 이 집의 구조를 모두 알고 있다. 이 집의 구석구석을 초반 20분 동안 우리는 이 부잣집의 모든 스트럭처를 파악했고 그 지하에 남자가 있었던 지하실이 아니라 그 가정부가 내려가는 그 매실청 있는 그 이제 들락거리는 지하실과 1층과 2층의 모든 구조가 우리 머릿속에 그려져 있다라는 일루전을 주는 게 중요했어요. 관객들한테. 그래야 나중에 딱 그 밑에 숨겨진 그 남자가 그 우리 오리지널 하우스메이드의 남편이 나왔을 때 그 공간이 소개됐을 때 오는 충격이 있거든요. 그래서 그 영화의 초반 한 50분을 보면 되게 자연스럽게 그 공간들을 하나하나 다 이제 소개하는 과정들이거든요. 드라마 속에서. 근데 이제 미키 17은 공간에 대한 인지가 반대죠. 이 되게 거대한 화물선 같은 그 우주선인데 별로 이렇게 예쁘고 팬시하지도 않고 그다지 사이파이적이지도 않고 지저분한데 거기에 인원들이 정확히 몇 명이 있는지 또는 뭐 모두가 모두를 알지도 못하고 약간 익명의 공간 속에 있는 것 같고 그리고 모든 공간을 다 봤다는 느낌이 끝까지 없는 이 지저분하고 어디가 끝인지 모를 것 같은 공장에 어느 일부분에만 막막하게 있는 느낌 그런 게 좀 중요했었어요. 네.
So
Sorry.
with The Rich House and Parasite, it was important to create an illusion for the audience. The first 20 minutes of the film starts with introducing all the spaces in that rich house so that by the end, the audience feels like they have seen the entirety of that house from the basement floor where the housemaid goes and sees all the fruit syrup to the first and second floor. And then after creating that illusion, the film completely shatters it by revealing the hidden man in the bunker, the housemaid's husband. And so that had to be incredibly shocking, which meant that the first half of the film really goes into detail about this space and introduces it amidst the drama and the story happening. And with Mickey 17, it was kind of the opposite approach. You have this ginormous spaceship that's almost like a cargo ship, and it's not fancy. It doesn't look like a sci-fi spaceship. It's very gritty and grimy. The whole point of this ginormous space is that you never get a sense of how many people are actually there. Everyone feels quite anonymous. You feel like they probably don't know each other as well. And so it was important that even to the end of the movie, we still don't have have any idea where these corridors end and the sort of the outer boundaries of this space. And it kind of had to feel like these characters were just thrown in the middle of a vast ocean with like no sense of direction.
I pulled some quotes here. Your production designer said one of your instructions was ordinary, not mythic, and that the human error was in the landscape. And your costume designer said anytime she showed you something futuristic, you rejected it. So
Catherine George said like that?
There's a part here of recognizable to a modern audience and avoiding the future sci-fi aspect, right?
오히려 작은 것에서 그걸 찾았던 것 같고요. 그 예를 들면은 그 기억 저장소가 이제 되게 독특한 디자인의 적벽돌, 빨간 벽돌, 브릭에 딱 드는 느낌이라든가 과거와 미래 느낌이 뒤섞인 그런 느낌을 좀 주고 싶었는데 그런 디자인도 제가 아이디어를 제공했던 거고요.
Yeah, I think we wanted to actually focus the futuristic elements to the smaller items in the film. Like you see that external hard drive that stores Mickey's memories. It looks like a red brick, so it's a mix of past and future. And so we tried to focus on those smaller props.
그리고
in terms of
이제
differentiating the look.
도시 뒷골목에서 스티븐 연 티모랑 이제 그 미키가 그 마피아 갱스터들한테 쫓길 때 그때 보면 그 골목의 로케이션이라든가 또 뭐 캐릭터들이 입고 있는 옷, 갱스터들이 입은 뭐 커스텀 이런 건 다 되게 그냥 요즘의 현실적인 또는 심지어 옛날 갱스터 영화처럼 보이기도 하고요. 로케이션도 옛날 느낌이고. 근데 거기 딱 유일하게 이제 독특한 프롭을 소품을 쓰잖아요. 그 금속공 같은 걸 굴리면 그게 띠띠띠띠 가서 이제 찌씩 뭐 감전시키고 그러는데 그런 것들에 좀 그게 이제 이질적으로 그 미래적인 느낌을 주게끔 그렇게 얘기를 했었죠.
In the sort of city sequence where you see Timo and Mickey get chased by gangsters, the location just looks like a back street that we know. Even their costume, it looks very contemporary, and even I guess you can say that the costumes and the locations sometimes look quite nostalgic. But the only thing that seems futuristic is that metal orb that beeps and goes after Timo and Mickey and electrocutes them. So we try to use those smaller props to make it seem like a society of the future, and bring these sort of like more disparate elements.
But recognizable, right? That's important.
그게 시선을 낚아채죠. 그리고 우주선에서 아까 얘기한 그런 지저분한 우주선이지만 유일하게 그 휴먼 프린터, 영화의 핵심 컨셉인 거기는 되게 좀 사이파이스럽죠. 그 공간만은 예외였던 것 같아요. 그 휴먼 프린터의 디자인 자체도 이제 그 많이 고심을 했었고요.
Yeah, so they draw our attention. I guess in the spaceship, the only space that's really different is the human printer lab. That human printer and that space had to seem very futuristic and advanced.
Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you the Trump question. But in context of this idea that's a recognizable world, how conscious are you of current political figures, or we have 2 billionaires with space programs, that idea of where that line is?
2021년에 썼단 말이에요, 시나리오를. 예.
So I wrote the script in 2021.
그때
Seems like a lifetime ago.
너무 달랐죠.
So different back then.
그때 이제 팬데믹 도중이었고요.
We were in the middle of the pandemic still.
그래서 영화 보면 이제 미키가 이제 그 백신 개발에 이제 실험실 주의 신세가 되는 게 있는데 그것도 아마 그 어댑테이션 라이팅 할 때 영향 준 면도 있는 것 같고요.
So in the film, we also see Mickey become the lab rat for all the vaccine tests, and I think probably the pandemic was, flowing into the adaptation process.
정치적인 맥락을 뭐 구체적으로 생각 안 했다면 거짓말이겠죠. 저도 그렇고 마크 러팔로도 그렇고 사실 얘기 많이 했어요. 근데 이제 그 뭐 구체적인 인물들 얘기도 했었죠. 옛날 저도 한국에 약간 되게 재밌는 캐릭터 정치인 사진이랑 동영상을 보여준 게 있고 거기에 대한 응답으로 마크도 어떤 미국의 옛날 현역이 아닌 옛날 가버너 이제 그 영상을 주지사 영상 보여준 게 있고 뭐 되게 재밌는 영상들에서 되게 웃긴 약간 심각한 독재자라기보다는 약간 우스꽝스러운 광대형 정치인의 모습 같은 거였는데.
I would be lying if I say that we weren't thinking of the political context and the political atmosphere when creating this film. Mark Ruffalo and I had a lot of conversations about specific things and specific people. You know, I showed Mark videos and photos of a particular Korean politician where he was kind of being ridiculous. And Mark also showed me photos of a American governor from back in the day. So we weren't really focusing on serious, like heavy dictators. We were actually just focusing on like ridiculous, clownish politicians and the ridiculous things that they do.
Which feels like a documentary now. Why? I love Mark Ruffalo, but I don't think villain, and I don't think he's going to be my main comedic, the center of my satire. Why? I mean, he's great, but why? Because I understand you actually wrote it with his voice in mind. What drew you to him to do this?
아니 원체 좋아하는 배우였는데 그 조디액에서나 아니면 또 그 베네트 밀러 폭스캐쳐에서 보고서 되게 반했었어요. 근데 물론 지금 이 영화에서 같은 모습은 물론 아니었죠. 근데 되게 표현력이 섬세한 사람이구나. 그리고 약간 상처받기 쉬운 느낌? 근데 그 느낌이 오히려 나는 독재자 캐릭터에 도움이 된다고 생각했거든요. 독재자들이 또 상처가 있어. 잘 삐지고, 그죠? 네, 마샬이 잘 삐지는 캐릭터. 삐지는 걸 뭐라고 번역해야 될지는 좀 쉽진 않은데.
So, you know, I've loved Mark as an actor, and I've loved him in Zodiac and Foxcatcher, of course, very different characters. But I always thought he was such a great, nuanced actor. But there's this like very vulnerable and frail side to him. You can tell that this guy probably gets hurt easily. And I thought that was very important for this dictator character, where he gets offended by small things and is quite vulnerable.
그래서 히틀러도 그 비엔나 시절에 받은 상처 같은 게 있다고 하는데 이제 아니 뭐 그렇다고 뭐 그 정치적 나쁜 짓을 뭐 정당화하자는 게 아니라 그런 어떤 뭐라 해야 되지? 그런 여러 가지 쌓인 상처들이나 컴플렉스나 이런 트라우마 같은 것들이 안 좋은 방향으로 풀어지면 이게 되게 정말 끔찍한 인간 유형이 되고 정말 끔찍한 독재자가 되는 거라 생각하거든요. 그래서 마크 러팔로 캐릭터도 그의 과거사가 자세히 나와 있지는 않지만 이상하게 자존감이 없어 이 사람. 컴플렉스가 많고. 그래서 그 토니 콜레트 캐릭터한테 되게 의존하는 것처럼 보이거든요. 그리고 뒤에서 약간 매니플레이트하는 느낌이에요. 일파가 토니 콜레트가. 그런 상태를 그런 약간 독특한 캐릭터의 독재자로서 마크 러팔로 많이 할 수 있는 역할 아닌가 오히려. 그러니까 그가 한 번도 악역을 안 했다. 뭐 이런 게 중요한 게 아니라 그냥 지금 이 캐릭터 자체가 되게 그에게 어울리는 캐릭터이다. 연기하기에. 예.
So we've heard of, stories of Hitler when he was in Vienna getting offended by certain things and that culminating into other things, not to justify the horrible things that politicians do. But I think, when you go through, a lot of trauma or you feel this inferiority complex against something and you channel it in a wrong direction, you end up becoming a horrible person and a horrible political leader. And if you think about Marshall, we don't really know his history, but we can tell that he has a very low sense of self-worth. He always relies on his wife, Toni Collette's character. And, it feels like Toni Collette's character, Ilfa, is almost manipulating Marshall, and she's the one who has control over him. So this is like a unique dictator character that we're seeing. And so for me, it wasn't important whether or not Mark had done a villain role before. He was actually the perfect actor to portray Marshall right now.
You've talked before about how important it is for you to make the film in your head. And your collaborators have talked about that before. And it's almost a stress. You feel like and everybody visually knows, you're cutting as you go. How much of that is also important for you to free you up with the actors?
모르겠어요. 연기 지도, 연기 디렉팅이라는 데 있어서 사실 모르겠어요. 뭐 클린트 이스트우드나 뭐 예를 들어 뭐 뛰어난 배우 출신 감독들이라면 모르겠지만 사실 연기는 배우들의 영역이고 배우들이 되게 잘하는 거잖아요. 감독이 뭔가 인스피레이션을 주거나 큰 방향에서의 방향을 줄 수는 있지만 뭐 마리오네트 인형을 조절하듯이 이러쿵저러쿵 할 수 있는 건 아니라고 생각하거든요. 그렇게 해서 또 좋지도 않고 어떻게 하면 배우가 화면상에 봤을 때 컨트롤되고 있다라는 느낌을 안 줘야 좋은 것인데 제 입장에서는 생생하게 살아있는 진짜 행동을 하고 있는 듯한 느낌을. 근데 이제 그게 제가 구성하는 샷들의 어떤 정교함이나 또 플랜의 엄격함과 좀 충돌되는 지점이 있긴 있어요, 사실은.
In terms of directing acting and directing actors' performances, I feel like if you're Clint Eastwood or if you were a great actor before directing, then you can do it. But I feel like acting is totally an actor's realm, and the director can provide inspiration and set the general direction of performances. But I don't think it's good to sort of control them like like marionette puppets. I don't think it's good for the film either. And I want to make sure that the performances don't feel controlled when you're watching it on screen. I want it to feel alive and raw and very real. But sometimes that comes into conflict with how meticulously and precisely planned my shots and designs are.
기생충 때 어느 한 날이 패러사이트 때 어느 한 촬영 날이 생각이 나는데요.
I remember a particular day when we were shooting Parasite.
그 주인공 송강호, 저랑 이미 4번째 작품을 하고 있는 송강호와 또 저랑 처음으로 이제 같이 하게 된 조여정 씨라고 그 부잣집 아내, 그 둘이 같이 나오는 씬을 찍게 된 날이었어요.
It was a day when we were shooting with Song Kang-ho, who plays the protagonist. It was already my 4th time working with him. And then with the actress Cho Yo-jung, who plays the rich housewife, whom it was my first time working together.
그때 제가 이러쿵저러쿵 막 이제 요구를 하고 있었거든요. 디렉팅을 하고 있었는데.
At the time, I was making like all these requests to the actors.
근데 그 두 배우들끼리 얘기를 하더라고요. 그걸 내가 얼핏 들었는데 보니까 송강호 씨가 그런 얘기를 하고 있는 거야.
And they started to have a conversation amongst themselves, and I overheard Song Kang-ho telling Cho Yo-jung.
야, 여정아 좀 힘들지. 근데 금방 적응돼. 오늘만 잘 넘겨봐.
Yeah, he was like, Yo-jung, I know it's hard. I know it's not easy, but you get used to it. Just get through today and you'll be fine.
야, 지금 대사 외우는 것만도 힘들어 죽겠는데 뭐 카메라가 이렇게 오고 이렇게도 온 다음에 뭐 여기서 한 발짝 나오고 뭐 계속 사실 그 대사 외우는 것 자체 힘들어. 그지? 아, 우리 참 힘든데 감독님. 아, 모르시는구나. 뭐 이러는 거.
Yeah, I know it's like so hard just memorizing the lines, but now like he's asking you to be there and take a step there and all the fancy camera movements. Man, he has no idea how tough it is. Like you just memorizing the lines, that's tough.
근데 이제 여정이 너도 이제 한 다음 주 되면 다 적응될 거야. 이제 자꾸 하면 돼. 뭐.
Yeah, but you'll get used to it by the end of next week. It'll be fine. You'll be okay.
내 그렇게 복잡하게 얘기 안 하는데.
And I was like, I didn't think I was saying things too complicated, but
그 배우들한테 그러니까 주문을 많이 하면 안 되거든요. 그 찍어보신 분들은 다 느끼겠지만 되게 간결하게 해야 돼요, 사실. 그리고 뭐 테이크가 바뀔 때 예를 들어 얘기하고 싶은 게 이제 다음 테이크에서 얘기하고 싶은 게 한 7가지가 있으면 그 중에 일단 한 4-5개는 참고 2개만 얘기하거든요. 그것만 해도 사실 배우한테 부담이 되기 때문에. 예.
You know, if you've like worked with actors, you can't make all these requests to them all at once. You have to be very concise with what you tell them. When you go for a next take, there might be like 7 things you want to say, but you should choose like 2 or 3, and even just getting those 2 or 3 would be a win. Even handling that is a lot for actors.
근데 이제 저는 그렇게 하고 있다고 생각했었는데 배우 입장은 좀 다른가 봐요.
So I thought that's what I was doing, but I guess to actors it felt even more.
근데 요즘 애니메이션 하고 있잖아. 그래서 이게 보면은 애니메이션은 정말 마리오네트 인형처럼 다 해야 되는 거니까 살아있는 인간이 뭐 멋대로 하는 게 아니라 그래서 뭐 관절 아주 얘기 더 많이 하게 되더라고요. 약간 정신적으로 문제가 생기고 있는 것 같아 지금.
But now I'm working on an animation where you actually do have to control each character as if like they're puppets. And then so because you have the opportunity to and they're not just living, breathing creatures, I end up going into like how their joints should be moving. So it becomes too much of an obsession almost.
Thinking about that in context of the creepers I know is the same collaborator that you worked on with creating Okja and the host. Hicha. Okay. What is that process like? What is the starting point? Is this a matter of like you need to create a history of a species, or is it an animal?
약간 무책임한 건데 나는 화면에 어떻게 보이는가라는 결과물을 막 얘기하거든요. 크리처 디자이너한테.
This might be a bit irresponsible, but what I tell the creature designer is just what I want to see on screen, the final result.
그래서 이런 시퀀스에 이런 느낌을 줘야 되고 또 얘가 이런 식의 액션을 해야 되고 또 뭐 이런 식의 말을 하게 되고 필요한 것들을 막 나열하는데 예.
So I tell him like, oh, I need this kind of thing for this sequence, this action, these words. I just list all the things that I want to see at the end.
그럼 희철이 그거를 거기에 대한 생물학적 바탕을 근거를 또는 최소한의 정당화시킬 수 있는 것들을 막 준비를 해와요. 그렇게 스트럭처를 짜고 몸의 스트럭처를. 그러니까 생물학에 대한 동물학에 대한 기본 지식이 있어요. 탄탄하게. 뭐 당연히 그러니까 크리처 디자인 하겠죠. 네.
So once I list all the things that I want, then Hicher starts sort of imbuing the characters with their biological background and comes up with a basic anatomy of these creatures that would justify the actions or the things that I want to see at the end. You know, he has great knowledge in like basic animal anatomy and biology, which is why he's such a great creature designer.
호스트, 그러니까 괴물 때도 괴물이 이런 한강 다리 교각 밑에 매달려서 이런 아크로바틱한 동작을 해야 돼. 라는 그 샷을 나는 이런 샷이 필요해 라고 먼저 던지고 그런 아크로바틱한 동작을 할 수 있는 신체 구조에 대해서 막 고민하는 거죠, 이 친구는. 그 크리퍼 미키에서도 마찬가지인데 뭐 이 주니어 크리퍼들은 동그랗게 뭉쳐져서 막 굴러가야 돼. 그러면서 액션을 해야 돼. 그런 샷을 찍을 거야. 그러면서 저는 이제 뭐 아마딜로 같은 거 어떨까? 그 정도 힌트만 주면 그 다음은 이제 그 친구가 디테일들을 막 만드는 거죠. 네.
With the host, I remember telling him I want this particular shot where we have the monster hanging from the bridge and doing this acrobatic move. I need that shot. And then Hichar would come up with the anatomy of the creature that would make that move possible. And with the creepers, it was the same. I told him I need like the junior creepers to at one point roll up as a ball and start rolling. And then he would, and I gave him the hint of maybe something like armadillos because they roll up into balls. And then he just took it from there and created the whole creature.
And he's also very sensitive to the relationship between animal and environment. 그들이 살고 있는 환경과의 관계. 그래서 이 추운 눈이 온 행성에서 자라온 또 번식해온 생명체로서 이제 어떻게 몸의 열을 지키고 또 마마 크리퍼가 이렇게 퍼 같은 털 코트 같은 느낌이 나게 된다거나. 추위, 또 살고 있는 동굴, 환경과의 연관성을 또 만들어내죠. 그게 어떤 동물학자다운 측면이고 크리처 디자이너다운 면모인데. 예.
And he really thinks about the relationship between these creatures and their environment. You know, the creepers, they live on this very cold, icy planet. They've managed to survive. And what has help them survive. And so he would think about how they like restore heat in their bodies and the fur coat that Mama Creeper seems to have on her shell or skin, and the caves that they live in, how they withstand the cold, just all these elements in their environment that would be reflected in how these creatures look and operate. And that's why he's such a great animal specialist and creature designer.
And the climax was the ululation, that crazy moment of all the creepers doing 그거 하는 그 ululation이 그 질로 콘테르코보 그 알제리 전투 영화에서 온 건데요. 거기 보면 나오는데. 예.
Yeah, that ululation sequence is inspired by Battle of Algiers, the film.
Oh, sure. I wouldn't pick that up.
질로 폰테르코보 영화에 거기 보면 그 알제리인들이 저항하면서 마지막에 프랑스 군대에 앞서서 그거 한 되게 저항의 막 상징 같은 건데 그 울룰레이션을 할 수 있는 입의 구조나 이제 혀의 모습을 만들어야 되니까 그게 이제 디자이너랑 사운드 팀이랑 VFX 팀이 다 결합 의논해서 이제 그걸 한 거죠.
So in that film, you see the Algerians start ululating as a sign of rebellion against the French army. And in order to make that ululation possible, he had to think about the structure of their mouths and how their tongues worked. So he was actually working with our sound team and the VFX team, and they were all working together to make that sequence possible.
Congratulations so much on this one. I know it's 5 years in the making, but I love this film. Congratulations on it.
Thank you.
Good luck with it.
Great. Thank you.